Great to be here. As Lena says, I'm Barry Matthews. I'm the Chief Exec of Open Assembly, and I'll explain who Open Assembly are in a second. Great to be described as an authority. I'm not sure I've been described as an authority before, but yeah, no, great to be here. I think it's such an exciting time to be a freelancer. I really believe that freelancing is going to completely transform work as we know it. And so it's an amazing time to be in freelancing, and particularly in software development. I think there's so much opportunity in this space right now. My background is I've got sort of 20 years plus experience in consulting. I've always worked in consulting, typically in operational efficiency, so helping clients to do things sort of better, faster, cheaper. A lot of that time has been spent helping clients with big outsourcing programs. I'm going to talk a little bit about the outsourcing market today, because there's such huge demand in that space. Done quite a bit in global business services and shared services, a bit in robotic process automation, so all techniques to help companies do things more efficiently. And then I sort of spotted the trend for what we call open talent, and I'm sure Adam was referring to open talent yesterday, i.e. helping enterprises, big clients, to access skills on demand, typically via digital marketplaces or platforms, and realized that, you know, that was a trend that was inevitable to me with the rise of digital technology and the platform economy. But it just felt to me that enterprises were not very good at it. They didn't really know how to do it. And so I decided to set up a company to help them to achieve that in the same way that we've done with robotic process automation and with outsourcing and global business services. It's just another trend. I don't think I think I'd underestimated what a significant trend it was and is, because of course this was all pre-COVID, and remote work and, you know, the way people are thinking about work has changed forever. And so I now run this company, Open Assembly, which I'll tell you a little bit about now, in what we do with clients. And today I want to just share a little bit about what I'm seeing with clients and what I hear sort of on the ground. So Open Assembly, as it says there, is the world's leading community and knowledge resource for the open talent economy. And it was founded out of the Laboratory for Innovation Science at Harvard. So John Windsor, who's the chairman and founder of Open Assembly, is the executive in residence at Harvard's Laboratory for Innovation Science. And so that gives us a sort of academic and scientific backing. But what we do practically every day is work with big clients to try and bring the world of open talent to them and help them to access it at scale. And we work with some big clients, and that's sort of increasing every day. And we have a network of experts that we work with to provide the consulting. So we use freelancers who are experts in open talent to deliver consulting services for our clients. So we not only sort of tell them, you know, how to access open talent, we use open talent to deliver open talent, if that makes sense. And Open Assembly also, excuse me, last year set up something called the Center for the Transformation of Work, which is an amazing community of individuals. It's a not-for-profit or a charity, if you like, a social enterprise, where we advocate on behalf of freelancers who earn some form of income through marketplaces or digital platforms. There's about 3,000 of us now, companies and individuals, who are members of this community. We meet twice a month, so it's all free. Please come and join us. And our mission is to transform work for 1 billion people. We want to particularly transform the work for freelancers. We want to provide freelancers with more security, more certainty of demand, you know, ability to make sure that platforms don't take too much of the take, for example, or to make sure that there's security of income if possible, and ability to pay into pensions and have health insurance and life insurance and the like. So we want to make freelancing a valid and viable career choice. So as I say, please check out the Center for the Transformation of Work as well. So as I said, Open Assembly enable what we call open talent. We do that through consulting. We also do that through research and publications. And we have a methodology which we've developed with Harvard, which is the subject of a book which is going to be published in, I think, March next year, which John Windsor and Harvard are writing. And so we have a sort of a practice and an approach to make sure that open talent at scale works for enterprises. We do that by providing some of the basics in terms of education, because you may or may not be surprised that quite often we'll go into large organizations and talk to them about using freelancers at scale via digital platforms, and they won't have heard of Open Talent, or they might have heard of Upwork or Freelancercom or Fiverr, but they won't think it's for them. So quite a lot of what we do is that sort of education and evangelizing in terms of what Open Talent is. And then we'll take them on a bit of a journey. So we'll say, right, if you want to access talent at scale, and that talent is distributed around the world, and you might never meet those talented people, how do you do it? What's the strategy for doing it? And we try to get them to think seriously about Open Talent in the same way they might have thought about outsourcing or global business services or RPA, my previous consulting experiences, because it's as big as that. If you really can tap into talent on demand, no matter where it is around the world, it needs to have a strategy. It needs to have executive ownership at a senior level. And you need to solve for things like security and background checks and intellectual property and insurance and the like. And so we help organizations. We don't have a platform ourselves, by the way. We don't have a marketplace, and we don't want to have a marketplace, but we put big companies in touch with marketplaces. We help them contract with the marketplaces, and then we help them to establish sometimes digital talent clouds. So clouds, virtual clouds of freelancers who have been pre-vetted and pre-screened and are there with the right skills, of course, who are then available to work for them on demand as and when they require those skills. So they're able to tap in on demand in a flexible way. And if they can get that, then of course that's sort of nirvana right now, because we're going through such a talent crisis in technology. It's the biggest challenge for just about every enterprise right now is access to technology talent. This is an Everest statistic that 86% of enterprises consider talent shortage as a key barrier to growth. And you'll read about it everywhere, and I'm sure you've read lots about the Great Resignation. But as the chairman and CEO of IBM says up there, every company, every country, every government has woken up to the fact that technology isn't a cost of doing business or something that just sits in IT. Every business is a technology business now, and traditional recruitment models will simply not satisfy or sustain the unprecedented demand from clients for digital technology skills is just through the roof. It's increased since the pandemic because organizations realized that they needed to be agile and digital to survive and to maintain their resilience during COVID, and they're going to need to do that in the future. And so enterprises are all looking for the same talent, and they're looking for their outsourcing service providers also to meet their talent needs. But the outsourced service providers and the enterprises are all sort of typically fishing in the same pool, looking for the same full-time talent, and they find it hard to get the right people with the right skills in the right location at the right time. As of the Great Resignation, they've got huge attrition rates. This is another Everest survey. During the first half of 2021, attrition levels across the technology service providers rose by 10.5% on average. There's wage inflation, huge wage inflation for specifically in the technology services area, and the investment that's required in training for future skills. So traditional recruitment models just cannot keep up with the demand for technology right now. Now, if you think of the outsourcing service providers who have got unprecedented demand for their services right now, the competition for talent between them is just hotter than ever before. The numbers, as I say there on the top left, are striking. According to Microsoft, there'll be a shortage of 160 million tech workers in 2025, 17 times more than it was just 6 years previously. So attracting and retaining tech skills is an increasing challenge for them. And some of those statistics on the right, which I've literally just screenshotted from publications. Look at that second one. Cognizant, who are a global technology services provider with hundreds of thousands of employees, plan to hire 45,000 graduates. I had to read that twice because I thought it was 4,500, but it's 45,000 graduates in Q4, with attrition rising to 33%. You know, you don't have to be a very good mathematician to realize how many of those graduates will leave. And so inevitably, technology service providers are also looking at open talent as part of the solution to finding the tech skills that they need. Rather than just relying on traditional employment models, they're now looking at technology skills and renting them as opposed to employing them, and using open talent models and digital platforms to enable them to do that. So we're seeing significant demand from outsourcing service providers to try to help them access skills on demand using freelancers via digital platforms, if that makes sense. So enterprises are now using digital platforms and using the freelance model much more than they were before. And COVID has been a huge influence on that. Now, these are just some statistics, some graphs from Upwork's Future of the Workforce report from earlier this year. I think it was September this year. And it was based on a sample of 1,000 hiring managers. Now, it was actually just in the US, but I think the European picture is very, very similar. You know, 53% of businesses saying that remote work, and just the concept of not seeing your colleagues and not having to travel to an office, has increased their willingness to use freelancers, because it changes the whole notion of what the workforce is. And they're much more willing now to see their workforce as an ecosystem of both employees and external skills in various different forms than they ever were before. And software development is the largest category, and growth is predicted to continue. So the top right there, how has your likelihood using freelancers changed as a result of remote work? Well, you know, more likely with whether it's remote only, remote only or either, sorry. And how remote freelancing use has changed, and again, you know, more during COVID in the past 12 months and over the next 2 years. And then how remote freelancing use has changed, and web, mobile, software development, IT and networking are the largest categories, and will continue to be over the next 2 years. This is some sample data from various different sources, from Harvard Business School, from SIA, from Upwork. So 90% of business leaders see talent platforms as important, and we're seeing that more and more with clients. Even over the last year, more and more of the companies that we speak to are familiar with the platforms and more comfortable using them. There are many, many platforms out there now. You know, we used to say there were 200. I read a Deloitte report the other day which said there were 800. I think it depends how you categorize talent platforms and marketplaces, but I think there are around 250, something like that, of them sort of major platforms, and we're actually categorizing them at the moment. 33% of talent platforms say revenue at least doubled in 2020. There was a significant impact on COVID, as you can imagine. You know, and 50% of Fortune 500 companies use Upwork to contract freelancers, and that's only increasing. This is freelancer.com. There are now 58 million freelancers on freelancer.com. Now, obviously, only a small percentage of them will earn a living, a proper, let's just say a full-time living, if you, although it's probably not full-time, but as and when they choose, but use it as their only source of income, and they'll use many other platforms as well. And many will do it on the side of their desk, of course, but just having those 58 million, you know, people. And if you think Upwork have got, I think 30 odd, and Fiverr have got something similar, you know, there's you know, 100 million plus between those three publicly traded platforms. So the numbers are striking, and 80% of the Fortune 500 using them. And the most popular skills that are used on platforms within enterprises are software related and technology related. These are the 10 most popular skills on Upwork last year, and that hasn't been published for this year yet, but I'm sure the numbers and the trends will be the same, that it's JavaScript and it's HTML and it's WordPress and Python and web development. You know, front-end development and front-end developers right now on these platforms are like hen's teeth. Everyone is asking, can you find us? Can OpenAssembly help to put us in touch with platforms to find front-end developers on demand? So I think that's only going to continue. Now, as I said, there's one one area of the business that we speak to are clients themselves, direct customers, if you like, insurance companies, banks, travel companies, but the other are the technology service providers. And I think this is incredibly important, as I mentioned earlier, because they are now starting to think differently about their workforce. And this, if you think about it, could be quite a challenge. If you're an IBM typically provide services to their clients through a sort of managed service model. But if IBM can't find sufficient numbers of people, they are then going to an Upwork or a Freelancer.com or an Expify to find freelancers that they can set up to work for IBM's clients. Now, that's quite a challenge from IBM's perspective, because you have to convince your client that you can work with pools of freelancers in the right way to supplement your workforce. And again, there'd be nothing to stop the client not going to IBM, but going direct to one of the digital platforms. So there's a competitive element in there as well. But service providers now, the likes of IBM and their competitors, literally have no choice but to work with freelancers. And they're realizing that when they do work with freelancers, they're actually getting a brilliant service, a better service in many instances than they are getting with their full-time employees. And that's driven a lot of demand for the type of services that we are providing. Just a few examples. I mentioned IBM. They're currently partnering with freelancer.com to access cloud skills. You heard from Topcoder yesterday from Adam Moorhead. Topcoder acquired Aperio, who owned Wipro acquired Aperio, who owned Topcoder, I think back in 2016. Topcoder have now got 1.6 million freelance developers, some of the best software developers in the world in their workforce. A company we do some work with, UST, who are a digital transformation partner to many large Fortune 500 clients, work with multiple open talent platforms now as part of what we refer to an open talent ecosystem model to blend some of the best technology talent in the world into their full-time teams. And then a few examples at the bottom there. You may have heard of Turing.com, who've been around now, I think, a couple of years, based in Silicon Valley. They hire effectively on a freelance basis software developers, some of the best in the world, well, engineers really. I think there's 100 different disciplines, who will never be employed like on a full-time basis by Turing.com, but will be provided access to opportunities and will have passed stringent tests. I think only the top 1% of applicants pass the Turing.com test, but they've got 1 million engineers now on their books, distributed around the world, able to be tapped into on demand. Gigster have a similar model. You've probably heard of Gigster. They're relatively well known. They've got some amazing developers. And Distributed, who are based in the UK, have a similar model. They hire full-time staff in the UK to provide sort of oversight and architecture and security. And then they tap into a global distributed freelance team who are heavily vetted and curated for hard and soft skills to actually deliver the services, and they're doing incredibly well. So I want to sort of land on this slide for a minute, and I'll use another 5 minutes and then open it up for questions. But when we're talking to clients, and we first go in there, they say lots of different things, but typically they give us these type of challenges. And our job as Open Assembly is to overcome those challenges for the client and open their eyes to the art of the possible from working with freelancers through digital talent platforms. And they'll typically say, oh, it's a gig economy. The gig economy is, it's high volume, it's low quality, it's all commodity. We'll never get the type of quality we get from employees. And we convince them that that's absolutely not the case. Some of the best technology skills in the world decide now to work on a freelance basis. They want to take control of their careers, and they want to pick and choose when they work and how they work, and work with the best companies in the world. And you are likely to get better skills if you know where to look from the freelance economy than you'll be able to hire in your geography or who will work for you on a full-time basis. And so we're proving that every day with some of the skills that we're putting clients in touch with. So they gradually get that one. Security is a typical challenge. It's too high risk and compromises security, particularly with with the technology service providers that I talked about, the outsourcing companies, because if they're providing access with freelancers to their clients and they have to access their systems, then how do they overcome that? And they've typically worked with freelancers where they have to ship laptops, and we're trying to educate them, and we do educate them that having a VDI, BYOD and VDI type solution, and there's some amazing ones out there, will enable you to work with freelancers in a secure way, provide them with access to your systems and access to your client systems in an auditable and secure way. But it needs thinking about and planning. And just to be honest, helping them to avoid the practicalities of sending thousands of laptops around the world, half of which don't come back, is a real hurdle for them to overcome, but it makes a huge difference. They typically will say, we can't expose our confidential information to freelancers who we might never meet. How do we protect that? And again, we give them sensible, practical advice. And of course, as freelancers, you'll sign NDAs, you send independent contractor agreements. But we also say if it's your, crown jewels, which you really want to protect, then maybe that's not the best area to use, freelance resource in at this point in time. There are ways of overcoming that, but you decide which activities you want to put onto a platform and which you don't. Things like liability, what happens when things go wrong? Will freelancers have insurance? Will platforms take liability for things if things go wrong? Who do I call? And again, it varies dependent on the type of platform you work with. Some will take some liability, some won't. So we provide them with advice on that. And then there's the communications piece. When they think that if they work with the freelancer, they won't be able to get to know them, to have them at their stand-ups in the mornings and work with them as part of the team, which is of course incorrect. They realize once they start working with them that they can work with them for months at a time, even years at a time on a part-time basis, with compliance taken into account from an employment perspective. But once their penny drops, so they can actually work with them as part of their team and they actually become friends and effectively colleagues, then that goes away. Reliability, will freelancers stay? Will they not just leave for a better opportunity if it comes around to them and they're offered more money? And again, in our experience, no. Freelancers that we put in touch with enterprises are generally very reliable. That they work with them to the end of the project or to the engagement. They want to get their good feedback and typically do a fantastic job. Or clients will say, we already have an MSP for this. We already work with agencies, which is of course a completely different model. And many freelancers don't want to work in that way. So open talent enables them to access a different pool of talent. And then of course culture, and culture is a really good, it's an interesting area of change. But working with freelancers can add to diversity and inclusivity, and it can improve the culture as opposed to being a negative force, but you need to know how to do that. So we spend a lot of our time doing change management in all of these areas and more. Then the final thing I'll say is what I started with, which is, I honestly think it's such an exciting time to be a freelancer. And I think the way we work is going to be transformed by us taking back control of the way we work, being able to travel and with a laptop and an internet connection and just tap into work as and when we want to, rather than it being a, industrial revolution, sort of 9 to 5, paid holidays and pensions and working for a big employer. I think we have the opportunity to use our skills to do what we want to do. And this is a World Economic Forum graph that the majority of workers will be freelance by 2027. Whether or what not that will be true or not, none of us quite know that yet. But I think the trend is very much there that more and more of us are deciding to be freelancers. And the reasons for that are, the growth of technology. So particularly in the software development space, the remote work, enterprise confidence, organizations like mine and others, making organizations see the light and see how they can use open talent safely. But then also the trend that everything is delivered as a service and talent can be delivered as a service. And I think that's the secret that we're trying to unlock, is to say, how do we make access to skills really simple, sort of click of a button? And then of course, younger people coming into the workforce who are more familiar and comfortable with this way working, the fact that enterprises have a flexible, variable cost model that they can ramp up and ramp down. And then I think what's really important, and it's really important that we all get our head around, is Web 3.0, because I think that's going to have a huge change on the way we think about work, and it's going to drive massive demand for software developers. And whether that's because organizations will think about more decentralized models, they'll be set up as decentralized autonomous organizations based on smart contracts on blockchains, or whether it's the way we think about IP and ownership of NFTs and everything else that goes with it in the sort of ownership economy. I think the metaverse is going to be interesting because we'll start thinking in virtual ways as well as just physical ways, and it'll be so less important about where you are based. And I think all of these things, whether we call it the passion economy, the ownership economy, the maker economy, are going to really change the way we think about work. And freelancing, it probably won't be called freelancing in a few years' time, but that sort of flexible access to skills as and when we need it will be a good thing for us and you as freelancers, and a good thing for companies who need access to skills at any point in time. So I think it's such an exciting future.